All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming today and taking a little bit of time to spend a half hour with me. Just giving another 30 seconds here. It looks like we've got just a few people joining me today. Not bad. I had five that said they were signing up, and three of you shown up so far. That's great. Interesting thing. I've got Jerry, Joe, and John. So everyone starts with the letter J today. So that should be worth noting there as it is. Before we get started today, I'm going to take just a quick moment here to let you know who I am. My name is Chris Potapenko. I've been with RealRx now for a little over 3 years. You all, at some point or another, I believe I've worked with you or spoke with you along the lines here. I know definitely I've worked with Jerry. Um, Beyond this, I do trainings and webinars like we're doing today. I do product support in-house. I do on-site trainings, on-site demonstrations as well. So a little bit of everything I've got my hands into. More notably, the last year, I've really started focusing on our products in our welding suite, which is all behind me as well here, and we'll touch on that just very briefly at the end. But other than that, if you've got issues or problems, you end up calling in somewhere along the lines. I'm looking at those issues or problems or suggestions and feedback, and trying to feed that through and make sure that we improve the product as we go forward. With that being said, I'm going to bring up PowerPoint here and we'll get started today. We got a lot to go through in a 30-minute time span, but let's get to it. So today's topic of discussion is diving into that guideWELD VR welding simulator, and really touching on preparing for that successful implementation, getting the products in your hands, set up, ready to use, and you're really approaching it with your students excited, just ready to go. Couple things just before we begin here. I do want to mention that after this webinar is completed there, you all are going to receive a email with just a certificate of completion there. Also, if you are viewing it on your end there, what you're going to see is in the upper left-hand corner, if you've got some audio issues or you just need to increase or decrease your volumes there, you can do that in the upper left-hand corner by clicking on that audio setup. If you have any questions or comments during the webinar here, that second button on the top left is the questions and answers button. Go ahead and click on that, type out anything that you've got inquiries on, and I'll definitely try to touch on that. I'll keep an eye on that throughout the webinar so that if you've got a question specifically on something that we're working on, I don't go past it and then we'll backtrack quite a bit to get to it. I want to try to catch those right away. Finally, if you want to expand your viewing window there, that upper right-hand corner, just like in any of the other windows that you would have for any other programs there, you'll click on the little expand icon and you'll maximize your viewing angle at that point. Last thing here is I am recording this webinar, so this will be available out on our website as well. If after we've completed this, you want to go back and watch a piece of it, or you think maybe one of your colleagues should take a look at it and see what they think, it's going to be available for everyone to view right off of our website there. All right. So going forward here, what we're going to discuss today is we're going to go over the product itself a little bit. We're going to talk about installation of the product. I'm also going to touch on a few common things I've seen when people bring this product in their classroom, some of the setup things that I've seen cause some issues there. Not a thing major, but we'll definitely touch on that. We're going to go into that software then, and we'll actually talk about the administrator account within the software, that teacher account, and then that student account as well. So if we look at the product itself here, what's going to come with it is going to be this workstation, either a MIG or stick welding gun. You can purchase both of them as well, but they're both removable. A pair of welding gloves, 3 welding joint types, T-joint, lap joint, and a V-groove or butt joint there. The necessary cables to connect that unit, and then also a standards-based curriculum that goes along with that. So if I pan back out here and we take a look at the unit a little bit, I'm going to zoom in just so you can see a little bit of the hardware that we've got going on here. And I'll lift it up a little bit as we get going, but really what we've got is the guideWELD VR base unit itself there. I already have the T-joint connected to it, which is just a plastic coupon, used as a reference point and also used in beginning tacking for the welding, which is a necessary step because that also calibrates the hardware and software to let it know exactly where that welding bead is going to be laid down. On the table in front of me here, just a pair of welding gloves. You can use them in your shop if you want. The other welding joint types, a lap joint and then a butt joint here. The other exciting thing that came out is this unit and software also does stick welding as well. So we have a simulated rod holder here, an electrode. As this is being used, this does retract in, just like you'd be consuming a rod in your welding shop. We wanted to simulate that as well. So we have a piece of hardware here that simulates the consumption of that electrode, and you'll see it on the screen as well when we get in the software and get to using that. Oh, I see a question pop up here. All right. Yep, Jerry, it's okay that you don't have a microphone here. In a webinar base there, it doesn't allow for audio coming from your end anyways, so it is just chat back and forth. So if you've got questions, go ahead and keep typing them this way. But thank you for that. Sorry to hear that you got some bad weather out your way. All right. Going forward here, if we look at the rest of the unit, I'm going to try to lift this just a little bit. It's just two cable inputs on the back, USB cable and a power cable here. We've got a power button on the left-hand side. And if I spin it all the way around here and get my hand out of the way, what you're going to see is the connection port up front where the detachable guns connect to. So we do put an orientation mark on both the guns and the unit so that it's easy for you to get that connected. The other thing and the last thing is right on the bottom here, you'll see this little gray plate underneath my fingers. We are including multi-channel setup for the hardware itself. So if you've got multiple units in your classroom, we can change that communication channel. So there's absolutely no interference on that. Most times, if we have a distance of 6 to 8 feet, there's no need to change those channels for communication. The other thing to point out about common things that we run into is when you take this back, it is a welding simulator, but we need to have the unit not on a metal table or a metal surface. The hardware, the way it functions inside, use electromagnetic field, and that can be distorted by any type of steel surface that it could be sitting on. Hop back out to PowerPoint here if there's no questions coming up. Going forward, we talk about installing the software here. So one of the big things for installing software is you have options. If you purchase one unit and you've got one computer on your end, you can do what we call a single user installation. You will install the software on that one computer. It will include a database where all of your user data will be stored, and it's just a one-to-one connection there at that point. So you as an instructor and your students will all go to that one computer to use the software and to look at the grades, so on and so forth. If you've got multiple units, we do offer what's called a multi-user installation. So your IT staff could install the software on a local server at your school. Then all 5 units, if you had a 5-pack, would communicate back to that one location, a central database. So then you as the instructor are only setting up your classes and your students one time. And then anytime you go to look for grades, you only have to go to one location or one database to get those grades. So a couple different options there. Again, I do the support for the products here. So if you have any questions in setup or your IT staff has some questions, they can always give us a call, and I will assist to the best of my ability, walk them through that, and answer any questions that they have coming up. This little utility after installation, it's very rare that you would use it for anything else. We do have the option to back up a database. So if you want to carry over your information from year to year, I know oftentimes in the summer, IT will come in and they'll wipe your computers. You can make a backup of that database and then restore it after they reload everything on there for you. So you don't have to lose anything, and we just make that simple for you to be able to do in this utility that we have. Going forward here a little bit is we're going to talk about the administrator account for the software. I already have mine set up on here, so these are the usernames and passwords that I've set up. The first time you go to launch your software, you're going to log in as a user of admin and then the default password of admin. It's going to prompt you to change that. You can choose something of your liking. I've just chose 123 ABC for simplicity's sake. Logging in as that admin account, the main purpose is really to create and delete instructor accounts. So you're going to come in as an instructor, create yourself in the software. You can change units of measurements as well. So if you use metric, maybe in autos class or something of that nature, you can change that and it's defaulted for everyone else that logs into the software at that point on. There's some other things about resetting passwords or using touchscreens, things of that nature. But again, the big thing logging in as admin is you're creating that instructor account. I'll go through the other two account types and then we're going to hop into the software and I'll show you what that all looks like when we put it together here. The next time you log in, you're going to log in as that instructor. Again, the username and passwords here is just something I chose, but really this is the meat and potatoes of the software. This is really what you're going to want to see and focus on when we get in there. This is where you're going to create your classes. You're going to add your students and you're going to give assignments to those students. And then you can come back and view those reports and individual grades for those students as well. It's really important that I mentioned here, our software doesn't have any licensing requirements. So you can have as many classes, as many instructors, and have as many students as you want. There's no seat license associated, so there's no reoccurring fees for the software as well. On that point, I'll also like to mention that any software updates that come out for guideWELD VR here are free as well, and they're available on our download site through our website as well. So anytime we have fixes or feature enhancements that are in the software, those are always free to you as well. Going forward just a little bit here, the next time you log in or your student logs in, this is where they're going to come in to do welding. So you'll log in as a student to practice your welding, test those abilities, and then see immediate feedback and grading of those welding abilities also. I'm going to pull up the software now just so you can see what that looks like. We've got it running right here. Let me hop back here. It didn't like that at first here, so I want to make sure you can see it all right. Okay. So what you should see is the first launch screen. When you open up or launch the guideWELD VR application, it comes up to this settings screen, if you will. So in here, we have the ability to choose various languages. You can adjust resolution. So if you're using this as a teaching tool at the front of the class and you're using a whiteboard and projector or a big screen TV, you can change that screen viewing resolution to match that monitor that you're using. You can select from full screen or windowed mode. And then the graphics piece is the one at the end. It's still very important. The software itself is graphic intensive in that it needs a dedicated video card to be able to run and display things appropriately. If you have an older computer with a graphics card in it that is a little bit older, you can tick the box on the left here and bring that graphic setting down a little. However, there's going to be a limit as far as how low you can go, which is going to be down to fastest here. But we're still going to require pretty much that minimum specification for a dedicated graphics card with 1 GB of dedicated video RAM or memory for that card. Now, I've seen some older computers, they are able to run the software. It may not look as great as it could, and you may experience some jitteriness or some lag in utilizing the software in that welding booth there. So if you see any of those things, that first thing to check is going to be that graphics card. Clicking play here and going into the software, the first thing you'll notice it does is it's going to check to see if there are any updates available. It's going to tell you that that database is up to date and bring you to that login screen. Now, if you have your unit connected to the internet and there's an update available, it'll ask if you want to download that right away. You can click no and continue going to the login screen, or you can click yes and get that latest software version installed on that machine immediately. Now, the one thing to point out is you do not need to have continuous internet access on the computer that you're using this unit on. So I do have some instructors that will use it for open houses or career fairs, try to drum up some excitement for their school. You can take this unit, a standalone laptop, carry it, and go. All right. So I'm going to log in as that admin real quick here. I'm going to just briefly show you what that looks like. So you'll see I've got a lot of instructors signed up on my computer right now. But this is all that is in the admin window here. At the bottom, you'll put in your first name, you'll put in a last name, and you'll click the welder icon with the little plus symbol. It'll put you up on the top list here, and you'll notice that it takes your first name, your last name, so many characters of them, and then it gives you a username in that third column. That username is what you're going to log in with as an instructor. So from this screen, that's all we're doing is creating that instructor account. So I've got a username here. I'm going to use my top one, which is just T1. I'm going to click the little exit button here. I'm going to log in as my instructor. And the first time you log in, you're not going to have any classes in there. It's going to tell you you need to add a class. So it helps you out that way. To add a class, you'll click the Add Class button in the bottom left here. You'll give it a name appropriate to whatever classes you have there, and it will throw it up in the list. If we take a look across this top one here, I'm just going to go from left to right. You'll see I have an option to archive a class. So if I've created a class one semester, we finished, I can click archive. It will close that class, and no students will be able to log into it for the rest of that semester there. Next semester comes, I want to open that back up, but I want to edit my students. You can go in there and add new students. So you don't have to recreate your classes and recreate all the assignments every time either. Another thing we've done to try to help expedite the legwork you've got to do as an instructor is we've put in this little reset feature here. And you'll see we have some options. You can delete all student data for the class. So that will keep your class, your student names, and all the assignments, and it's just deleting their progress. You can delete the student data and students in the class. So now you just have an empty class with all the assignments but no students. So then you can go back in and put second semester students in. Or you can delete everything and just have the class listed there and start over from scratch. So we want to give you some stepping stones where we can hopefully take away some of that extra typing you'll have to do in the software there. The next thing you'll see in the little black box, or excuse me, the blue box next to the class names here, and it just tells you that they're active in this case. The next we'll see is class average. So it takes all the student scores, averages those out, and tells you this class is getting, I believe it says 92%. It's really small on my screen. It tells us who the instructor is. It tells us the number of students in the class, number of assignments I've given that class. The next one is kind of the big one, is the material savings. Remember, in a simulator world, we're saving on gas, we're saving on steel. So when you have this, you can add a price point to each of the welds you're having your students do, and this will keep adding up those savings through the times that they're practicing and taking those tests. The edit student option here actually takes us in, and it's set up just like adding an instructor. You'll put their first name in the bottom here. You'll put their last name in. We'll click the Add Welder button, and it will put them up top here. So it'll take first name, last name, and then give a username for that student to log in. When you go to your students, you give them that username. You have them log in with a username that you give them, and then a default password of password. It prompts them to change that password to something of their own choosing. They do that, they're in the software, and they can see all the assignments. The next thing to take a look at here is this edit class. This is where you actually give the student assignments to do. You'll notice on the left-hand side, we have all of our MIG and stick default welds as I scroll down. So those are already pre-configured defaults. We have 27 different weld types here. And by that, we get 27 based on, we have MIG welds, and then we have the 3 different joint types. In this case, the top one in orange indicates it's a MIG weld, a T-joint type. We have a steel type. All of our default WPSs are mild steel. We have 3 different difficulty types: novice, intermediate, and then advanced. And then we have a whole slew of varying metal thicknesses or gauges that you can choose from. To give a student a default weld to do, you simply just click the plus sign on the right side. It transfers it over to the class assignments list on the right side of the screen. So now when a student logs in, they can now see 2 assignments in this case. The great thing in the simulated world is this center screen here. In your area, you may have different industries, either in agriculture or marine building, shipbuilding, or structural engineering, whatever it may be. If you have any spec sheets from industries in your area and you want to get your students practicing the same types of welding they're doing, you can come in here and you can modify any of these categories that are not grayed out. So for weld type, you can click on an arrow and go from MIG to stick. You can change your joint types in here by clicking. You can change from mild steel to stainless to aluminum. You'll notice orientation is grayed out here. Orientation is something that we're currently working on. Right now, our welding unit does a single pass horizontal weld. We're looking at doing possibly inside-outside corners, or vertical welding, or pipe welding. So it's something that the software has implanted in it. We just don't have the hardware developed yet for it, but it's on our roadmap to get that out. Going through, you have the different gauges of steel that you can select from. Material cost. This is where you in your area can set what your material prices are. Something in my area in the Midwest here, may cost me $1 to do a 6-inch weld. Out on the coast, maybe it costs $2. So you can go through and what your prices are for your steel, for your rods, for your wire, whatever it may be. You can come down here and change that material price so that keeps an accurate total of what you're saving by using these simulators. On the right-hand side in the center here, you can change work angle, travel angle, nozzle to plate distance, your speed. You can select from push or pull in MIG. You'll notice when I go to stick, it defaults to pull only. And then you can change your difficulty levels. For stick in the bottom center here, you can see we have some different electrodes by default in there: 6010, 6011, 6013, 7018. So you can choose those as well. Once you have a WPS set up in here that you want, you'll click on save, you'll give it a name, it will go in your available assignments list, and you can give that assignment to your students. I'm going to log into as a student now so you can see what that inside booth looks like. I'm really good at talking, so I end up losing track of time sometimes. But as we take a look here, this is what the student will see. This particular student, I've got a lot of assignments for them. It keeps track whether they've done practices and tests, and it will mark them as complete. It will tell you if they're ready to take a test, or it will tell the student if it's a new assignment. It will also give them percentage or progress grades here. It'll tell them the specs of the weld that they're doing. And then we're going to go through, and I'm going to grab one here. I'm going to grab a novice one right down at the bottom, and I'm going to go into practice so I can show you what that looks like. As I come into the welding booth, we're stressing safety still. Put those gloves on, bring that helmet down, and get in position. Now I already have my VR unit on. I have the MIG gun attached, so it wants me to tack the left side as shown. This is important because this is calibrating that unit to tell it where to expect the weld to occur. Now, hopefully I'm not going to make anyone very seasick in here, but you'll notice in the center of the screen, I've got a little equal sign or a plus symbol. So that's my speed indicator there. In the upper left and right-hand corners, as I get in and out of position, you'll see arrows for the work angle and travel angle, getting me back in point. You'll see on the nozzle of the gun itself, I've got a nozzle to plate guide. So as I get closer, it gets in position. As I get farther away, it has an arrow telling me which position I need to go and how to get closer to where I need to be. I'm going to set the gun down for just a second here. All of those dexterity guides that we have are on the left-hand side. You'll see the little orange buttons. In this case, if I'm practicing and I'm good on speed and I want to turn that off, I can turn that guide off. So your students can come in and use as many dexterity guides or as few guides as they need to keep improving their skill. The bottom part here is for rotating camera angles, but I can also do that with left and right mouse buttons. And Joe, your question about if you go into practice mode and the MIG gun doesn't show up. Most times what will happen is that the unit itself doesn't detect the hardware, and you should get a message showing that the hardware doesn't show up. If you haven't gotten that message and the gun is not showing up, I would check to make sure that the computer meets those minimum requirements, specifically for the graphics card, and make sure that the driver's up to date. And then I would work with you to make sure that we're testing that gun, disconnect the gun, reconnect it, make sure that the unit's turned on, all those common things that I would see being the issue. But if you have a unit and you're having those issues, certainly get in touch with me afterwards here. I'll have the contact information for support, and we'll go through and we'll make sure we get you up and running. All right. So moving in the virtual welding booth here, again, you can do it with the left and right mouse buttons. If I hold the left mouse button and drag left to right, I can rotate. If I hold my right mouse button and I push forward or pull back, I can zoom in and zoom out. So no matter what angle your students like to view the welding at, you can do that same accomplishment inside the software here. I'm going to go through and try to do a weld here sitting down a little bit. It's a little difficult from this angle, but we'll go through. So we've got that golden gun glowing there. What that's telling me is I've got my positions correct for the difficulty I'm doing here. So my work angle, travel angle, nozzle to plate is correct. If I start getting off on one angle or the other for my work angle or travel angle, you're going to start to see some indicators coming up on the screen telling me which corrective action to take to get back into position. So the whole purpose is to kind of have that instructor over their shoulder giving them corrective action as they go along here. Once they're done, they'll click save. They'll get a graded report just like this. And what we do is we break down the work angle, travel angle, nozzle plate, speed, and straightness. For this difficulty, which is novice, you'll see the dark gray bar in the center there, which indicates how much tolerance we give them as a beginning welder. That orange line in the center of that is tracking my work angle as I go along, travel angles, nozzle plate, and speed. You'll see speed is kind of all over the place here. We get individual scores for each of those things so that the student knows what we need to practice more on and what we need to focus on. So for me right now, it looks like I need to work on my travel angle and my speed. So next time I go to practice, I may turn those other guides off, focus on those two. We take these 5 scores, we average them out, and for this weld, this practice, I got a 91%. We give a couple other options here. There's a video replay, so you as the instructor can come by. If they're looking at this report, you could say, show me what you just did. They'll click play here. It will replay their weld that they had just done. You have camera control in there, so you can work with them to point out where they started to change their angles, where they sped up, slowed down, any of those things. So good talking points there. The student can click on history, and they'll get a line graph showing their progress over time. So they can keep track of their practice scores and their test scores here with that orange dot. All of these reports that you see here, the practice ones as they come through, practice shows up, they get their grades here, they move on. The ones that we really care about are those test scores. And what makes the testing great in here is once that student has achieved a 50% or greater for practice as the score goes, they can come back and they can do a test. Now the welding booth is exactly the same. What's different here is we want to tack, and you're going to notice that there's going to be no dexterity guides on the screen whatsoever. So when they go to do a test, it's just muscle memory and skill by that point. There's no assistance that can happen for the student. So I'm pretty sure my speed's off a bit, and my angles are off, and I'm a little farther away. But I'm just zipping through this real quick so you can see, even though the box is in the bottom left corner there, no help in testing scores. So it's just skill at that point. They click save. they get a grade just like they did before. So the grade, whether practice or test, still shows up the same, still looks the same for the students here. What I want to do real quick, we just got hit that half-hour mark here. Um, I mentioned stick. I'm just going to switch the gun real quick to show you one of those stick welds, and that pretty much wraps up everything we've got going on here. So just a quick turn off of the unit, take the other gun off, bring that rod holder and electrode over, set it in place, plug it in. I'll turn the unit back on. Takes just but a second, and the computer should recognize that other device connected. And then I'm going to go into a stick weld here real quick just to show you what that looks like. So still going into the booth here. Going to put the gloves on, put the helmet on. I'm going to pick up the rod holder electrode. What happens is it says, please wait. It's resetting this hardware device in my hand so that I have a full electrode to use. It wants me to come over, and this tacking is a little bit different than you normally do for stick, but we have a little button on top we press, and again, that's just to calibrate where that weld's going to occur. As I come in, you'll notice I still have the same dexterity guides. As I get close and in point to begin to weld here, strike that spark, strike that arc, and get going. Have all the same guides. You get a golden gun when you're in the right position here as well. And as I go along, this electrode gets consumed. Now, if I get to a point where I'm using a thicker steel, there is an option to reload a new electrode in there. There's an animation that comes up on screen showing we're replacing it with a brand new one, and the hardware device gets reset. At this point, I'm going to chip that slag off, brush it clean, and then I'll get my grade for this. What's important to notice is that while we still have all the dexterity guides here, it's no longer nozzle to plate distance. It is now listed as arc length for that. But our reports are going to look exactly the same. So whether they're using MIG or stick, when they get to the grading portion, we're grading on the same things here. The score's the same. Nothing changes between the hardware devices we have. All right, so I'm going to finish up here. Just a couple slides real quick to go through. So for any help or looking at anything else, we do have a support website for guideWELD VR. RealityWorks.com will take you right to our site. Click on support and you can go in there. I'm actually creating the videos and more documentation out there, so there'll be more to come. Our product support information as well, there's a link. You can email us right down there, or you can email productsupport@realityworks.com. And then our phone number there, 1-800-830-1416. Option 2 gets you product support, 7:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. Central Standard Time. And that's all I've got for you today. I know I kind of zipped through the end a little bit quicker there because we're out of time already, but if you've got any more information, certainly feel free to email us, information@realityworks.com. Give us a call, check out our website. Behind me, you'll see all the other products we have for our welding suite. So if you've got questions on those as well, always give a call. I'd be happy to answer any of those that you may have. But for now, all I can say is thank you for taking time out of your busy day to spend with me. And I'll stick around for a little bit yet in case you guys have some questions. Again, if you do have any questions, right at the top of the screen there is where you're going to want to click on their top left.